Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Jacob Zuma comes under more pressure to leave as the result of an anti-corruption report finds possible evidence of corruption. Also, Kenya announces it's done with South Sudan, vowing to pull 1,000 troops out and disengage with the peace process. It's an angry response to the firing of the Kenyan commander of UN peacekeepers in the country over a damning report that branded them badly led and risk-averse. And Uganda's president ordered the indefinite closure of one of the country's oldest universities after days of student protests. But first, South African protesters took to the streets on Wednesday, calling for their president to step down. It's as a state anti-corruption watchdog said it found possible evidence of corruption within Jacob Zuma's government. It's called for another probe into allegations that he allowed the wealthy Gupta family to weigh in on political decisions, including choosing cabinet ministers. Zuma at first tried to block the report's release. It's the latest blow to his credibility after a series of high-profile scandals and blunders. This week, the Nelson Mandela Foundation said that the state had been weakened under Zuma. However, its CEO told me that despite his failings, political change in South Africa relies on more than just him.
We are where we are today because of concentration on individuals. And I want to remind viewers out there that in the past we have had instances where concentration on the individual then made us forget the bigger ball that we were dropping around constitutionalism. That our constitution as a supreme law of the country needs to be the guiding principle, the guiding document. That our values are based on that constitution, that we should not, therefore, be concentrating on an individual. And similarly, this time we're saying it cannot just be the president who should be made to account for these things. South Africans must also take responsibility for some of the things that are happening because. Despite us being worried, we never actually raised our voice and concerns as loudly as we are now.
So it's clearly important to you to bear in mind the bigger picture. However, when you're talking about an individual who is the president of the country, who seems to be personally in the centre of a lot of the scandals that seem to really undermine the credibility of the political scene of the nation, you can't really turn a blind eye, can you?
You can't, of course not. However, the politics of the individual is exactly what has brought us where we are today. You'll remember that in 2006, 2007, some of the leading politicians in South Africa were even willing to lay their lives for the President Zuma, to be president. And today we're reaping the fruits of that. And we're cautioning against making these issues about an individual. They're bigger than an individual. All of us must carry the responsibility and say, what do we need to do in order for us to turn the wheel around?
Salah Hatang there, the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Well, Nairobi is furious and pulling out 1,000 troops from South Sudan over the UN's firing of the head of peacekeeping forces there. The Kenyan was sacked following a UN investigation that blamed a lack of leadership for soldiers standing by or abandoning their posts as civilians were attacked, raped and killed in Juba. The report tackled an outbreak of violence in the war-torn country in July when South Sudanese soldiers went on a rampage. Over a dozen people have been arrested in South Sudan accused of rape and looting. Earlier, the report's author told me more about his impression of what happened.
The fact that the UN headquarters and the protection of civilian sites where thousands of internally displaced people fled to were in the crossfire between the SPLA and the SPLA-IO forces in the period between the 8th and the 12th of July. And that was an extremely irresponsible act because that meant that a lot of people were killed, a lot of UN property was hit, and a lot of people, in particular women and girls, were raped and harassed.
So the head of peacekeeping forces has gone, but that can't be the end of it. There's clearly many more issues that have to be addressed. What, for you, should be the priority?
Well, the priority is that the member states who are sending troops to peacekeeping operations, and it is not only in South Sudan but also in other missions, should take a bigger responsibility to make sure that those troops are willing and having the skills to implement the mandate and the rules of engagement to protect civilians under imminent threat. And that is not in many cases what they are doing. They are very inward-looking and not outward-looking. They are not patrolling on foot outside those headquarters, and they are not patrolling during the night, and they're doing the dark hours. And that is something that is unacceptable for the Department of Peacekeeping.
So member states should do more to make sure that their troops are prepared to do the job that they're being sent in to do. But what can the UN do to make sure that the member states it relies on actually delivers on providing the kind of men who can actually create missions that do the job?
Well, first of all, the UN can make sure that the proper leadership is appointed in those missions. And second, the UN can make sure with the member states that they indeed are doing the pre-deployment training according to the guidelines and the manuals that the United Nations is providing, and that the member states are making sure that those troops have the right mindset to do the job.
So Kenya says it's out. That looks like the political fallout from the report may actually have more of an effect on compromising the protection that troops can actually offer to those on the ground. Have you shot yourself in the foot?
Well, no. I mean, this is the decision of the Secretary General to replace the force commander. There's nothing to shoot themselves in the foot. The Secretary General saw the report and he decided accordingly.
In other news, Uganda's president ordered the indefinite closure of one of the country's oldest universities after days of student protests culminated in violent clashes with police. The rallies are in response to a fortnight of strikes by academic staff demanding better pay.
These students are packing their belongings, but not because they're on holiday. Makarere, Uganda's top university and one of the oldest in Africa, has been closed indefinitely. President Yoweri Museveni ordered the closure after days of student protests culminated in violent clashes with police. Students were angry because teachers had been on strike for 2 weeks demanding better pay. The police said it would monitor the situation closely.
Particular individuals who will be cited at the university doing any mobilization of the university students or lecturers will be dealt with accordingly, because some political actors want to jump on this situation.
Many students were shocked by Museveni's decision to close the university until further notice.
We were not consulted. The notice came late. It was at night, and they came with an entire battalion of police officers chasing students out. Surely, this is unjustifiable.
We are all wondering what is going to happen, and even we are not sure when we are coming back to go to campus. Everything is just in a mess, and we can't explain the situation at present.
Opposition leader Kizza Besigye urged students and staff to defy what he called a ridiculous order. Besigye officially came second in February's presidential election, but says his victory was stolen by Museveni, who's been in power for 3 decades.
And finally, for 3 years, France 24's sister radio station, RFI, has presented the Ghislaine Dupont and Claude Verlon Award in honour of 2 late colleagues who spent much of their careers covering stories across Africa. It's given to a radio journalist and technician every year from French-speaking countries on the continent. And this time it was presented to its latest winner in Benin on Wednesday.
20 young people from Benin were selected from over 220 nominations by the France Média Monde Academy. And choosing a winner from Benin didn't happen by chance.
Benin is the first country to have a sovereign conference, multi-party elections and a completely open media. Traces of it can still be seen today. It's an extremely vibrant press.
Shortly before the award ceremony, we followed a team in the field during a radio exercise in Ouida, a historical city made infamous by its role during the slave trade. Parfaite is the only female technician in the competition.
Generally in Benin, we don't care much about atmosphere, but if you move, you should change the ambience so listeners can live what you're experiencing.
The final step is putting theory to practice, creating a good visual image, using sound and gathering information. These candidates are reporting on conversations between the descendants of slaves and slave traders.
I'll do a radio report that'll be better than a TV report because even by just listening, we'll be able to imagine everything, picture everything and live everything with me through my report.
31-year-old Cécile Godou has in any case won over the jury. The young woman is a journalist on Benin Public Radio and was rewarded for her reporting on the dialogue between widows who oppose levirate marriages and their family-in-law. On the technical side is 22-year-old Didier Guédou. He's a sound technician at the press group Eden TV Diaspora FM. The jury rewarded his mastery of sound on a report called Slavery and After.
It's a new adventure in my career, a fresh start.
Highly qualified professionals who can still learn and be themselves. For us, it is a great pride and a great joy to remember them vividly.
The winners will spend 1 month in Paris, first in the Africa service of RFI Afrique, followed by a training course in reputed institutions in the French capital.
Well, a very big congratulations to both of them. That is it, though, for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us.